is Vivica from the Nourished Caveman and the Healing Foods Method. And welcome to my Keto Live Q&A on Thursday here on Facebook and then reposted on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me, and would love for you to say hi and tell me where you're watching from. A couple of my patients are here. Thank you so much for the support, ladies. So lovely to see you here with me. So today we're going to talk about gallbladder, which is a very kind of personal subject to me. In fact, I'm going to share my personal story with you, my personal long gallbladder story, and how I got to keto, pretty much, but let's do this. I want to also talk to you a little bit about the usual good information that you all like so much. What is a gallbladder for? And then we want to talk about why is the gallbladder so important for keto, and if we can do keto with a compromised gallbladder or no gallbladder. I get a lot of clients right now that already come to me after having their gallbladders removed. It's very unfortunate, but that does not mean that we cannot do keto without a gallbladder. So let's jump right in. I know there are many of you watching. Thank you so much for being here with me. Please say hello. I love to meet new audience, new people watching, and I hope I'm bringing you good, valuable information. And in order for me to do that, your questions are really important. So please feel free to chime in. I have your comments here on my feed. I'm looking at them so I can reply, and we can have a conversation, which is much more fun than me just talking to this phone. Dolores says she's going keto with no gallbladder. Awesome. So we'll definitely address that. This is one of the purposes of this video. The other one is how to save your gallbladder if you have one and your doctor might have said something about removing it. So I'm sorry guys, I am having a sip of tea. This is live video, very informal here. It's like a chat with friends. And that's why your questions are all welcomed. This is not a very doctor formal video. This is really kind of like sitting together and learning about your health and learning about how to do keto for women, especially women over 40. This is like my tribe. I have, in fact, an Instagram, which is a Nourished Caveman, which really targets to women over 40, and same on my YouTube channel. So please subscribe, please share these videos or my page with other women that you know that might need this information because they're starting keto, or they're failing at keto, or they don't know how to do keto, and they're not getting the results they want, because this is not just about a ketogenic diet, but it's about your health. It's about menopause and perimenopause and how to navigate these difficult times for a woman in a good, positive way, with maximum results for our efforts. We like that, right? So, and for all of you who are my dear beloved followers, and you show up for me week after week during these Facebook lives, and you know that I have personally had quite a hard time with my move in the last month, and if you look at my past videos, you'll understand why if you were there for that video. But I have finally moved, and this is finally my new office with the new windows. So look, I will give you a quick preview. It's coming along, and this is beautiful Mount Shasta. These are the famous new windows, and that's my view outside. And we'll go 360. I'm on this side, but this side needs a little more work. There are still boxes on the ground and stuff out of the closet, but it's starting to look much better. Sanity is coming back. And yes, my books are on the shelf up there. My office is coming back together so that I can be more effective and not like a crazy person trying to help my patients. But I like it when everything is nice and organized and calm in my workspace so that I can really focus on you and all of my clients. So let's jump in. Thank you for being patient. I just want to share this bit of my personal life with you, and I will be sharing more of my personal story with you today when we talk gallbladder, because like that was a big deal for me. So first of all, what is a gallbladder and what does it do? All of you know that we have a gallbladder, but we don't really know all the secret life of the gallbladder and the secret workings of your body. So a gallbladder is a little sac that sits right next to your liver, right here on your right side. Yeah. And the main use for the gallbladder, being a little satchel, is to store the bile. So the bile is not produced in the gallbladder, it's produced in the liver. Your liver produces the bile, which should be thin and liquid, like almost like water, like a thin, like free flowing liquid that will produce and flow through the small bile ducts into the gallbladder. And you know, English, my favorite language, and I get all tongue-tied, but forgive me, bear with me. So the other big function of the gallbladder that nobody really talks about is to concentrate bile. And that is a very important factor, because the ability to concentrate bile, it's kind of like when you have a pot of, let's call it sugar water or salt water. It's better because I don't do sugar, so let's use salt. So we have a pot of salt water on the stove, and the longer you leave it on the stove and the longer it cooks, the more concentrated this solution will be. So the thicker it becomes, kind of like bone broth. The longer you let it boil, the more water evaporates and the thicker it becomes. So the same thing, the bile becomes thicker and thicker in your gallbladder for a variety of reasons that are very important for your health. We'll talk about them in a second. So storing and concentrating bile. But now I want to also talk about bile, because not many people know what bile is and what the functions are, and that's very important. Bile is a main component of your digestive process. So you gotta make friends with bile, even if it's this like kind of witchy, weird substance that's like brilliant fluorescent green and bitter as it could be. If you ever process chickens on your own, we used to have our own chickens, and whenever I cleaned out the inside of the chicken when we were butchering them, I very carefully removed the liver and then tried to remove the gallbladder without breaking it, because if the bile went onto the meat or onto the liver, forget it, you can throw it all away. It's disgusting. So you don't want to, you know, come in contact with bile, but there is a reason for the bile to be like that. Bile is made of cholesterol mainly, so it's very important as well, because I was just watching some videos on YouTube and I could not believe, I'm not going to quote names, but I could not believe the information that I found. Somebody who was saying that the gallbladder stones come from cholesterol because you eat too much cholesterol. Well, guess what? The bile is made of cholesterol. And yes, there is a reason why the bile will thicken, but that is not because of cholesterol. So there is so much misinformation. We need to be really, really careful about how we understand the real sources of disease, because there has been a lot of crossed wires and a lot of manipulated agendas. So, you know, in the last 50 years, the medical community and research like to try to point a finger for all kinds of disease to fat and cholesterol, when in reality, fat and cholesterol are the good guys, while sugar and not insulin. Insulin is kind of like the poor, don't shoot the messenger, right? But sugar is really the culprit of many things that cholesterol and fat are blamed for. And now, almost fell into a rabbit hole here, but let's go back to bile, our green little friend, little green monster bile. So the functions of the bile, it aids, number one, it would aid in fat digestions and emulsification and therefore absorption. So without bile, we cannot absorb saturated fat. This happens, we need bile for saturated fats and long chain fats. They need to be broken down into kind of like bite-sized pieces so they can be absorbed by the intestine. So emulsification of fats is very important and is done by bile, so then we can absorb the fats. Also, we absorb through the bile, we absorb fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, and K. It also helps to regulate your microbiome by regulating pH. Because bile is very alkaline, so imagine the food from your stomach, where it's been broken down by the hydrochloric acid, gets transferred to the small intestine and has a pH of about 3, which is very acidic. And there comes bile at a pH of 7, 8, and neutralizing that acidity, so that by this change of pH, the absorption in the small intestine can happen, and also enzymatic reactions can start being triggered by the change of pH and the elevation of the pH. So bile has not just one function, there are multiple functions of bile, and they are extremely important. Also, it acts as a lubricant for your intestine, for your colon, so that you can have good normal bowel movements. So as you can see, there are very important functions of bile. It's not just the absorption of fats, English please, but also good bowel movements. And so isn't that really important? That's why the function of the gallbladder is also really, really important. So we want to be able to have, let me see if there was anything else. Oh, and the bile also helps your body to get rid of waste products, which is, again, detoxification, cleansing of the body, and a good digestive system that works. So we're back to the gallbladder and the importance of the gallbladder. I want to talk about this for a second before we go into doing keto with a gallbladder or without a gallbladder, or what could cause gallstones. And then I guess I'll tell you my story at the end, so that we'll save the more fun stuff after the more scholarly stuff here, if you can say so. So let's talk about gallstones for a second. Now we see that liver produces bile, goes into the gallbladder, but when do gallstones come about? Why we cannot keep our gallbladders healthy? What is it that influences, the gallbladder health and makes our bile, which should be thin and running like water, to just condense up into those gallstones? Well, number one, we know that bile can be condensed, and that's, one of the functions. So when we don't use our bile so much, it can start concentrating because the gallbladder is never used. And when does that happen? Okay, trick question here. Anybody wants to chime in? Why would your gallbladder concentrate the bile? Why would we not be using the gallbladder? Any ideas? I know I can hear the quiet in the audience. Well, if nobody wants to pitch in, I'll tell you the answer. When we don't use it, meaning when we don't eat fat. So I know somebody wrote something, low-fat diet. Yoo-hoo, Nicole, she said it. Thank you, Nicole. Good job. Yeah, so when we're not ever using fat, we are not ever squeezing out the bile of the gallbladder, so the bile tends to solidify pretty much, and it could solidify into little stones or sludge, which sometimes is even worse. It's really easy to get sludgy bile. And then somebody else says something, too much fat. No, that's the opposite, Renee. It's not enough fat, because if we were using a lot of fat, then you would need a lot of bile, so your gallbladder will be pumping all day and staying active and clean. On the other hand, when you have a low-fat, high-carb diet, you tend to not use your gallbladder so much. So number one, the bile thickens. Number two, it loses tone. It loses muscle tone. Like any other muscle, even your peristaltic muscles in your intestine, your muscles on your arms, you need to use those muscles in order for them to stay tonified. Now I lost track again. Oh yeah. There is another reason why the bile would get thick, and that's a really big one for us women especially. And guess what? That is why so many women have gallbladder issues, much more than men do. And anybody wants to chime in on that? I know there are people watching. Nicole, you can chime in again. You probably know it. And I know Sandy probably knows it if she's still here. But why would women have so much more problems with the gallbladder, much more than men? Any idea? I'm going to take a sip of tea while you guys are thinking. It's my afternoon tea. Yay, Robin, good job. Estrogen. Dolores says, I went on 2 very low fat diets that caused me a lot of problems, including hormone problems. Yes, everything is connected, Dolores, and probably a long-term. Good job, Sandy, Nicole, and Robin hit it right on the head, estrogen. And welcome to live videos. So this is part 2 of how to do keto with, gallbladder issues, or can we do keto without a gallbladder? Sorry, at this point, my brain has gone all over the place, but we'll pick it back up. So we can do keto if we had previously gallbladder issues. I would do 2 things. First is add fat incrementally and in small steps. Do not go all in and go from high carb, low fat to 70% fat the next day. I would definitely transition slowly by gradually lowering the carbs before you start increasing the fat. And also, don't forget that you only need as much fat as you need calories. Fat is just, hi Sandy, thank you. Fat just fills in the calories you need. So when you are trying to lose weight on keto, yes, we do need a certain amount of fat to keep us satiated, to bring in the necessary vitamins and, fat-soluble vitamins, all those good things that the healthy fats bring. But a lot of people are under the impression that we need to stuff ourselves with fat to be in ketosis, and that is not the case. That's something that should be very clear. Ketosis comes about as from the reduction of carbohydrates, not from adding fat. So when you are starting keto and your gallbladder is not in the best place, then just start with a moderate amount of fat and work your way up as needed by your caloric needs. If you need to be in deficit, then you can be in the deficit with fat. I would always want to meet the protein requirements, because protein is the most important thing that you need to get from your food. So step by step, and then the second thing is support your liver. And I will say that until my tongue falls off is one of the staples of my practice, and how I am able to help people is we start from the liver. So if you already know that you are having gallbladder issues, your liver needs support and your bile needs support. So your hormones need support, because if you are estrogen dominant and your bile is thicker because of that, then we definitely need to start detoxing that estrogen slowly, so that your bile starts to flow again. And then you're going to be able to emulsify all the fats that you need and digest your fats, assimilate your fats, no problem. It's a bit of a process, so I would say start slow. And what if you have no gallbladder at all? Then what do we do? Well, it's kind of the same thing. The body has an amazing ability to adapt, And here I just saw another video by a very famous guy. He had like 43,000 views, and I don't know how many likes on that video is. I'm not going to name him, but very popular guy. And he was talking about the fact that you need to measure how much fat you want to eat by measuring your ketosis. And like, it's like, measure your ketosis with this keto meter XYZ, and so you will know how much fat you need to eat. But for me, that is like a big misunderstanding of the workings of ketosis, because you just need to add fat as needed. What you need to measure your ketosis for is to know how many carbs you need to eat, not how much fat. And how would that have to do with the gallbladder? So I don't know. It's sometimes I see things that just don't make sense, and these messages given by very popular influencers, let's call them, and they will give you these messages that really are not making sense. Sandy says she feels better after the detox. Yeah, I believe so. So support your liver, and if you have no gallbladder, there are supplements that you can take. There is one that's called, it's like gallbladder in a bottle, and is based on not ox bile, but bile salts. A very popular one you can get over the counter is ox bile, which is a little bit of a rougher version of what I use as a practitioner, but very similar. So if you're trying to do this on your own and you know that you don't have a gallbladder and you want to do keto, taking ox bile will help. It will just help to add enough concentration, by adding bile. You can concentrate it, you can store it, but you can add bile to your meal already, so that it will help process that meal. I would probably, let me think, if I had to take that supplement, I would take it like about 5 to 10 minutes after your meal, because you want to make sure that your hydrochloric acid doesn't get neutralized by the bile, or is a kind of supplement that is enteric coated, so that it will not be dissolved in the stomach, but it will dissolve in your small intestine. Because otherwise we're going to neutralize the HCl. It's kind of going to be like taking an antacid. That's pretty important. All right. And any questions right now before we jump into my story? I'm sorry that, was a little bit all over the place with this bad internet and lots of comments, but any questions? So Dolores says, I've never done a liver detox. You use gallbladder support. It includes ox bile and other good things. And I can't see more. I take it before a meal. Try, Dolores, to experiment with taking them before or after a meal. I think it would be definitely better after a meal, because you don't want to impair your ability to digest. Okay, so to end up this video today, I want to tell you a little bit my story, or the story of my little gallbladder friend who is still here while my moms and my grandmas are gone. It started when I was about 27 years old, and I remember being in New York. I was on vacation visiting friends, and one night I started having this pain, like right here and all the way to my back. And I felt like I had broken a rib. And I was in New York, and I remember I had pizza for dinner. So cheese, probably something like some sort of meat, and of course a regular pizza. This was way before I knew about nutrition, when I was still eating any and everything. And that night I had a few slices of the New York pizzas, really yummy. And then I went to my friend's house and I started hurting, worse and worse. And I was like, I think I broke a rib. I don't know what I did, but like I must have done something to my back, and it was an excruciating pain. I took an ibuprofen, didn't think about it. The next day it was gone, and that was it. And then a couple of months later, it happened again. And then it happened again. And then I started wondering what was going on with me. So I went to see a chiropractor in Los Angeles. By the way, I strongly recommending, we call him Dr. Brian, what is his last name? Brian McMullen. If any of you are in the LA area, is in Beverly Hills. And I was his patient. I'm still his patient, when I got to see him. But I saw him for more than 20 years, and he helped me a lot. The one thing that Brian doesn't do is work really with diet specifically, but he works with the same supplements that I work with now, standard process. So he diagnosed me, muscle tested me, told me that my gallbladder wasn't working, my liver was burdened, and so he put me on a protocol, and he told me to eat a certain way, but the guidelines were very generic. And he was like, don't eat this, don't eat that. It's triggered by fats, so watch out for fats. What you didn't tell me, let me see. Never heard that before, thank you. So I was about, 29, 30 at that point, and I started taking supplements to manage my gallbladder, but I also was not eating very well. So I was eating high carb, sometimes high fat, sometimes low fat, sometimes low carb. It was kind of all over the place because I didn't know better. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I just knew that I loved food, enjoyed food. I remember another time having a really bad attack triggered by Thai food, where I had a coconut curry, really fatty, with white rice. And starting to pay attention to it, I saw that these attacks were triggered by the combination of high fat, high carb. What probably happened, looking in retrospect, and by the way, this went on for more than 10 years. It got worse and worse. I ended up at the emergency room one time when I was in Brazil on vacation, and another time, I think I was here. Went to the doctor, got ultrasound. They didn't find anything. I didn't have stones. I had sludge. They couldn't even see the sludge. But looking back, what I realized is that I was probably already going towards estrogen dominance in my early 30s. I never done a liver detox. I drank. I didn't drink a lot of hard alcohol, but I definitely, like a good Italian, had wine all the time, dinner, and sometimes lunch. In Italy we drink for lunch and dinner. And when you're young, you don't think about those things, and you don't think about your long-term health. And my female hormones were also a little bit all over the place, and I had just had my mercury fillings removed. So I had a flooding of mercury through my body. So there was a lot going on. I'm telling you, I started nutrition because my personal history, I went through a lot of different things. That's why I understand different conditions. But the gallbladder attacks kept coming, and they were bad. I refused to have my gallbladder removed. In the meantime, my mother was struggling with the same, and eventually she had it removed. She didn't get better. She did not get better because she still had attacks, even though hers looked different than mine. She got really dizzy and nauseous and was like throwing up and like vertigo. Her attacks were more in that class. Mine were just straight up pain. So with the supplements and my stubbornness, I decided that to manage this. And finally, when I was about 45 or 46, I started studying nutrition. No, that was earlier than that. I get my years all wrong. Anyways, so once I started studying nutrition and was under the mentorship of Dr. Deborah Penner, we started learning about detoxing together. So for the first year, I did 4 liver detoxes in 1 year, back to back, pretty much. And then at the end of 4 liver detoxes, I did a gallbladder flush, a liver and gallbladder flush. The ones you find on the internet with the grapefruit juice and everything. I did a modified version of that. And I saw the stuff that came out of my gallbladder even after 4 detoxes. But after that flush, I never had a symptom again. Now, sometimes if I stray from my ketogenic diet and like I will have a meal where I have carbs, like if I do a carb up and I don't separate the fats from the carbs, I will feel a little pressure. I know the gallbladder is like kind of elbowing me. It's like, hey lady, watch out what you're doing. But it's still there. I still have it and I am digesting my fats fine. I know that there is, there is an edge there, especially at the end of my perimenopause. I had fibroids and I knew my estrogens were really high, even though I did those 4 detoxes in a year and I had to keep detoxing. So I do a detox I did every 6 months for another couple of years, and then I went to about once a year. But long story short, here we are. I did keto. I've been keto for about 6 years, on and off with modifications, exploring now with carbs, as doing keto long term. I have done carnivore, and I still have my gallbladder, and my gallbladder is happy. So I hope this video was helpful for you. I'm sorry we went a little bit longer than usual, but I'm glad that you were here. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions, please post them below and I will keep replying to the questions. This video will also be on YouTube so that you can continue to post your questions and I will continue replying them. You can join my Keto Paleo Women both here on Facebook on the Keto Paleo for Women group, and you can join my tribe on Instagram on the Nourish Caveman profile. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week, rest of your week and weekend ahead, and we'll see you next week for another Facebook Live.